Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing everything you see might be a lie. According to Immanuel Kant, this isn't just a scary thought. It's our reality. Right now, as you look around your room, touch your desk, or feel the warmth of sunlight on your skin, you might think you're experiencing the real world. But Kant discovered something terrifying. What we see, touch, and feel isn't reality at all. It's just our brain's made-up version of it. Think about color for a moment. When you see a red apple, you're confident it's red. But here's the twist. That redness doesn't actually exist in the real world. Scientists have proven that color is just our brain's way of interpreting different wavelengths of light. The red you see is your mind's creation, not a real property of the apple. This means that the apple you think you know so well might look completely different to a bee, a dog, or even another person. But it gets even stranger. In 2015, researchers at Johns Hopkins University conducted an experiment where they showed people the same image of a dress, and some saw it as blue and black, while others saw it as white and gold. This wasn't just people disagreeing. Their brains were literally creating different realities from the exact same information. This is exactly what Kant warned us about 200 years ago, and it's not just colors. The solid desk you're touching right now, it's mostly empty space. At the atomic level, what feels solid to you is actually countless tiny particles with vast spaces between them. Your brain creates the sensation of solidity to help you navigate the world, but it's not what's really there. Even time itself might be an illusion. When you remember what you had for breakfast this morning, your brain reconstructs that memory each time, often adding or changing details without you realizing it. Kant called this terrifying gap between what we experience and what's actually real the thing in itself, a true reality that exists beyond our ability to perceive it. This might sound like something from a science fiction movie, but it's happening right now, every second of your life. Your brain is acting like a movie director, creating a simplified version of reality that you can understand and use. The scary part? We can never turn this filter off. We're trapped in our own mind's version of reality, like being in a dream we can't wake up from. But if everything we experience is filtered through our brain's interpretation, how can we ever know what's truly real? This question kept Kant awake at night, and it's about to change everything you think you know about the world around you. When Kant first stumbled upon this disturbing truth about reality, it hit him like a lightning bolt. He was already a successful professor, teaching what everyone else believed about how we understand the world. But one day, while reading the philosopher David Hume's work, Kant's whole world turned upside down. He later wrote that this moment woke him from his dogmatic slumbers, a fancy way of saying it scared him so much he couldn't ignore it. For the next decade, Kant barely left his house in Königsberg, Germany. He was so shaken by his discovery that he spent years trying to make sense of it. His neighbors could set their watches by his daily walks. Same time, same route every single day. But inside his head, he was unraveling the biggest mystery of human existence. Why can't we trust our own minds? Think about what happens when you're dreaming. In a dream, everything feels completely real. The colors, sounds, even gravity itself. It's only when you wake up that you realize none of it was real. But Kant realized something far more disturbing. What if our waking life is just another kind of dream? What if our brains are constantly creating a simplified version of reality that we mistake for the real thing? Modern science has proven Kant was right to be worried. In 2019, neuroscientists at MIT showed that our brains actually make up most of what we think we're seeing. Your eyes only capture a tiny bit of information, and your brain fills in the rest based on what it expects to find. This means that right now, as you look around the room, most of what you see is actually your brain's best guess about what should be there. But here's why this matters so much. If we can't trust our basic senses to show us reality, how can we trust anything? Every decision you make, every relationship you build, every goal you pursue is based on your understanding of reality. If that understanding is fundamentally flawed, what does that mean for your life? This isn't just some abstract philosophical puzzle. It affects everything from how we build AI systems, to how we treat mental illness, to how we structure our societies. The scariest part? We're making bigger and bigger decisions based on our flawed perception of reality. We're building artificial intelligence systems that might soon surpass human intelligence. But these systems are based on our limited understanding of how the world works. As Kant would say, we're like blind people trying to describe colors to each other, yet we're making choices that could affect the entire future of humanity. This is why Kant's discovery matters more now than ever before. In a world of deepfakes, virtual reality, and AI, understanding the limits of our perception isn't just interesting, it's essential for survival. And what you're about to learn will change how you see everything, literally everything around you. Imagine being trapped in an invisible cage, one that shapes everything you see, hear, and feel. According to Kant, that's exactly where we all live. He called it the prison of perception. And here's the wild part. We can't even see the bars because they're built into our minds. Let's do a quick experiment. Close your eyes and try to imagine a completely new color, one you've never seen before. You can't do it, right? That's because your mind can only work with the colors it knows. It's like trying to run a Windows program on a Mac. Your brain has its own operating system that limits what you can experience. But it gets weirder. Scientists at Harvard recently discovered that some people can see colors that don't exist for the rest of us. They're called tetrachromats, and they have an extra type of cone cell in their eyes. This means they're seeing a world that's completely different from what you and I see. Imagine finding out that everyone else has been watching black and white TV while you've been watching in color. That's what it's like for them. Think about a dog's world for a moment. Dogs can hear sounds we can't hear and smell things we can't smell. Their reality is completely different from ours, yet both of us think we're experiencing the real world. Kant pointed out that we're all like this, stuck in our own version of reality, unable to step outside and see what's actually there. Here's something that will really bake your noodle. Experiments have shown that your brain decides what you're going to do about 6 seconds before you consciously make a decision. Scientists at the Max Planck Institute can now predict your choices before you even know you've made them. This means that even your sense of making decisions might be an illusion. Your brain is already running the show before you're aware of it. But the prison gets even stranger. Have you ever noticed how time seems to slow down during a car accident or speed up when you're having fun? That's because your brain isn't actually measuring time. It's creating your experience of it. Researchers at Duke University found that our perception of time changes based on our emotions, body temperature, and even how much sleep we got last night. The most mind-bending part? Scientists have found that about 95% of your brain activity happens without you being aware of it. You're not just living in a prison, you're living in one where you can only see 5% of what's going on. The rest is happening behind the scenes, shaping your reality in ways you can't even imagine. This is what kept Kant up at night. He realized we're not just observing the world, we're actively creating it in our minds. And just like a fish doesn't know it's wet, we don't notice this happening because it's all we've ever known. But understanding this prison is the first step to working with it, rather than being controlled by it. Think of it this way. Once you know you're watching a movie, you can start to notice the special effects. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. How your mind creates the special effects that you call reality. Your brain has a dirty secret. It's lying to you all the time. Not because it's trying to trick you, but because it has a fatal flaw. It can't handle reality as it truly is. Instead, it creates shortcuts, makes assumptions, and fills in gaps with made-up information. And the scary part, you never notice it happening. Take your vision, for example. Right now, you think you're seeing everything in front of you clearly, but here's the truth. You have a blind spot in each eye where your optic nerve connects to your retina. It's not small either. It's big enough to fit a grapefruit held at arm's length. Why don't you notice it? Because your brain literally makes up the missing information based on what's around it. You're walking around with 2 holes in your vision that your brain constantly photoshops out, but it gets crazier. In 2022, researchers at MIT showed that what you see isn't even coming from your eyes in real time. Your brain actually predicts what it expects to see and shows you that prediction. Your actual visual input is just used to correct any mistakes in the prediction. This means you're not seeing the present. You're seeing your brain's best guess about what the present should look like. This flaw goes way beyond vision. Ever wonder why you can't tickle yourself? It's because your brain predicts the sensation and cancels it out. But researchers found that if they add a slight delay between your movement and the tickle, suddenly you can tickle yourself. This shows how your brain is constantly editing your experience of reality. The most disturbing example of this flaw was discovered in a famous experiment called change blindness. People were asked to give directions to someone on the street. Mid-conversation, two workers carrying a door walked between them. Behind the door, the person asking for directions was secretly switched with someone else. Incredibly, 50% of people didn't notice they were now talking to a completely different person. Their brains were so focused on the task of giving directions that they filled in the details about who they were talking to. This fatal flaw even affects your memories. Every time you remember something, your brain actually recreates that memory from scratch, often adding or changing details based on your current situation. This means your memories aren't like videos stored on a hard drive. They're more like stories that your brain rewrites every time you tell them. And here's where it gets philosophical. If your brain is constantly making up so much of your experience, how much of what you think is you is actually real? Studies show that people's personalities and preferences change dramatically based on simple things like room temperature, time of day, or even what they had for breakfast. Your brain's fatal flaw isn't just about how you see the world, it's about how you see yourself. Kant would say this flaw isn't really a flaw at all. It's the only way our minds can function in a reality that's too complex for us to understand directly. Like a computer compressing a huge video file to save space, your brain has to simplify reality to make it usable. But understanding this limitation is crucial because it affects every single moment of your life. And as we'll see next, one of the biggest things your brain makes up might surprise you. Time itself isn't what you think it is. Time seems simple, right? It flows from past to future, ticking along like a clock. But Kant discovered something that would make your head spin. Time isn't real, at least not in the way you think it is. It's another creation of your mind. And once you understand this, you'll never see your life the same way again. Let's start with something weird. Have you ever noticed that a minute can feel like an hour when you're bored, but hours can fly by like minutes when you're having fun? Science shows this isn't just a feeling. In 2021, during lockdowns, researchers found that 80% of people experienced major distortions in their sense of time. Some people felt months pass like weeks, while others felt days stretch into years. But here's the kicker. The clock showed the same time for everyone. This proves what Kant said. Time isn't something out there in the world. It's something your mind creates. Your brain plays even stranger tricks with time. Have you heard of chronostasis? It happens when you look at a clock, and the first second seems to last longer than the others. Your brain actually pauses your perception of time during eye movements and fills in the gap with a stretched moment. This means that tiny bits of your life are literally made up by your brain to create a smooth experience of time. But it gets more mind-bending. Studies at the University of California showed that your brain processes information in 400 millisecond chunks, like frames in a movie. Everything that happens within one of these chunks gets grouped together as if it happened at the same time. This means your experience of the present moment is actually a string of snapshots, each containing about half a second of time, that your brain stitches together like a film. Einstein proved Kant right when he showed that time isn't fixed. It changes based on how fast you're moving or how close you are to a massive object. Astronauts on the International Space Station actually age slightly slower than people on Earth because time moves differently for them. This isn't science fiction. GPS satellites have to adjust for this time difference to work properly. Here's something that will really mess with your head. Neuroscientists found that your brain processes different aspects of experience at different speeds. Visual information takes longer to process than sound, but your brain adjusts everything so it seems simultaneous. This means your consciousness is always living slightly in the past, and what you think is now is actually a carefully constructed illusion. Even your memories play tricks with time. Remember your last birthday party? Studies show that memories aren't stored in chronological order. Your brain organizes them by importance and emotional impact, then reconstructs the timeline when you try to remember. This means your entire personal history, your sense of who you are over time, is largely a creation of your mind. Kant would say this is why we feel trapped by time, always rushing to the future, regretting the past. But if time is created by our minds, Maybe we can learn to experience it differently. Some Buddhist monks who understand this can alter their perception of time through meditation, experiencing hours as minutes or minutes as hours at will. And if time itself isn't what we think it is, what about space? That's what we're about to explore next, and it might change how you see everything around you. That room you're sitting in right now, it's not really there, at least not the way you think it is. Kant figured out that space, just like time, is something your brain creates. And modern science has proven he was right in ways that are far weirder than he could have imagined. Let's start with a simple question. How far away is your hand from your face right now? Easy to answer, right? But in 2018, scientists at University College London found that your brain constantly changes its perception of space based on what you're doing. When you're about to grab something, your brain actually warps its model of space to make the object seem closer than it is. This means the space you see isn't fixed. It's more like a rubber sheet that your brain stretches and squishes to help you act. Here's something even stranger. Researchers discovered that professional basketball players actually see the hoop as bigger than other people do. Their brains have literally changed their perception of space to help them shoot better. This isn't just a mental trick. It's their actual visual experience. Your brain isn't showing you real space. It's showing you useful space. But the space illusion goes deeper. Think about how you're experiencing this room right now. You feel like you're a person sitting inside a space, right? But neuroscientists at the Max Planck Institute found that your brain actually constructs space from the outside in. It builds a model of the world, and then places your consciousness inside it, like a character in a video game. This means your feeling of being in space is itself an illusion. The quantum physics discoveries about space would have blown Kant's mind. At the smallest level, space isn't empty at all. It's full of particles popping in and out of existence. And these particles can be in two places at once, or connected across any distance instantly. This means the solid, continuous space we experience is nothing like reality. It's more like a convenient fiction our brains create to help us survive. Your brain even messes with your experience of size and distance. Ever noticed how the moon looks huge when it's near the horizon, but smaller when it's high in the sky? It's the same size. Your brain changes its apparent size based on context. This illusion is so powerful that even knowing about it doesn't make it go away. You're literally seeing your brain's interpretation, not reality. Some of the most mind-bending evidence comes from people with brain injuries. There are patients who can see objects but can't tell where they are in space. Others who can't recognize the left side of space exists at all. This shows that our experience of space isn't just about seeing, it's actively constructed by different parts of our brain working together. Virtual reality researchers have found they can easily trick your brain into accepting impossible spaces, rooms that are bigger on the inside than the outside, or corridors that loop back on themselves in ways that can't exist in real space. Your brain accepts these impossible spaces because space itself is just another model it creates. Kant argued that this is why we can never know what reality truly looks like. We're stuck experiencing everything through our brain's models of space and time. But understanding these illusions gives us a superpower, the ability to start seeing through them. And that's what we're going to explore next, how to break free from these illusions and get closer to actual reality. So if everything we experience is filtered through our brain's made-up versions of reality, are we just stuck? Is there no way to see what's really real? Kant actually found a way out, and combined with modern science, it's more powerful than he could have imagined. The first step to breaking free is understanding that your brain has different modes of processing reality. In 2020, neuroscientists at Stanford discovered that we can actually switch between different perception modes. It's like having Instagram filters for reality, and you can learn to control them. When Buddhist monks meditate, brain scans show they can literally turn down the intensity of their brain's reality construction process. They're seeing the world with fewer filters. Here's a practical trick. Next time you're in a room, try to notice your blind spot. Remember that grapefruit-sized hole in your vision? It takes practice, but once you can spot it, you'll never stop noticing how your brain fills in missing information. This awareness is your first step towards seeing through the illusion. But it gets more interesting. Researchers at the University of California found that certain experiences can temporarily break your brain's reality filters. That's why time seems to stop during near-death experiences, or why colors look brighter after meditation. These moments give us glimpses of how much our normal perception filters out. The most powerful tool for breaking free might surprise you. Questions. Kant discovered that by constantly questioning our assumptions about reality, we can catch our brain in the act of making things up. When you look at a tree, ask yourself, what am I actually seeing and what is my brain adding? The color, the solidity, the sense of distance, they're all constructions. Some people have already started using this knowledge in practical ways. Professional athletes use perception hacks to improve performance, like focusing on the space between them and the ball rather than the ball itself. Artists deliberately mess with their brain's reality construction to see new perspectives. Even business leaders are using these insights to make better decisions by recognizing how their brains distort reality. Here's something really exciting. Scientists at MIT are developing technologies that can show us aspects of reality our brains normally filter out. There are goggles that let you see infrared light, devices that let you feel magnetic fields, and interfaces that let you experience time differently. We're literally building tools to peek behind our brain's curtain. But the most important breakthrough isn't technological. It's understanding that reality isn't something that happens to you. It's something you actively create. Every moment, your brain is making countless decisions about what to show you and what to filter out. Once you know this, you can start making different choices about how to construct your experience. Kant would be amazed to see how right he was. We're not just passive observers of reality, we're its active creators. And while we might never see the raw, unfiltered truth of existence, we can learn to be better directors of our own experience. The real question isn't whether reality is an illusion, it's what you're going to do now that you know it is. Because once you understand how your mind constructs reality, you can start rebuilding it in ways that serve you better. And that might be the most real thing of all. So here we are. Your brain is creating space, inventing time, filling in blind spots, and predicting the future before you even know it. Kant's nightmare about reality turns out to be our everyday life. But understanding this doesn't make reality less real. It makes it more incredible. Think about what we've discovered. Your brain isn't just passively recording the world like a camera. It's more like a film studio, complete with special effects, editors, and directors, all working together to create your personal version of reality. Every color you see, every sound you hear, every feeling you experience is a masterpiece of neural engineering. And here's the beautiful part. Once you understand how your brain creates reality, you can start working with it instead of being controlled by it. Those athletes who see bigger hoops, they're not being fooled by their brains. They're using their brains' reality-building powers to their advantage. The monks who can alter their experience of time, they've learned to adjust their brains' reality filters. But this knowledge comes with responsibility. In a world where everyone is living in their own mental version of reality, understanding and empathy become more important than ever. The person sitting next to you might literally be seeing a different color, experiencing time at a different speed, or constructing space in a different way. Their reality is just as real to them as yours is to you. Kant's nightmare about never seeing true reality has turned into something unexpected, a superpower. By understanding the limits of our perception, we can actually expand them. By knowing we're trapped in our mental constructions, we can start building better ones. It's like finding out you're in a dream, but gaining the ability to lucid dream. The next time you look around your room, remember, you're not just seeing reality, you're creating it. Every moment is a collaboration between the world and your mind. And while we might never see the raw, unfiltered truth that Kant lost sleep over, we can learn to be better artists of our own experience. Because in the end, the most mind-bending reality of all might be this. In a universe where everything we experience is filtered through our minds, the power to shape our reality has been sitting inside our heads all along. And that's not a nightmare, it's an awakening.